In the depths of night, when the city sleeps and only the pigeons dare to stir, there are those who swear they can still hear it. The low, electric hum of dreams that never died, echoing through the corridors of the New Yorker hotel. Room 3327 stands empty now, but the walls remember the man who spent his final years there, speaking to birds and chasing lightning through his dreams. The year was 1943, and Nikola Tesla was preparing for his last great experiment, death itself. Some minds burn so bright they cast shadows on reality itself. Tesla's burned bright enough to illuminate the world and dark enough to lose himself in the glare of his own genius. The man who harnessed alternating current, who dreamed of wireless power transmission, who claimed he could split the earth like an apple. He lived in a reality that existed somewhere between science and sorcery, between brilliance and madness. Born during a lightning storm in 1856, in the village of Smiljan, Tesla seemed marked by electricity from the start. His mother, an inventor in her own right, recognized something different in her son, a sensitivity so acute that thunderstorms would send him into fits of ecstasy, while the sight of a cat's fur crackling with static electricity could trigger hours of contemplation. Modern psychologists might diagnose him with obsessive-compulsive disorder, noting his peculiar habits, his obsession with the number 3, his compulsive need to calculate the cubic contents of his food, his terror of round objects, particularly pearls. But such clinical terms fail to capture the full complexity of a mind that could visualize entire machines in perfect detail, running them for weeks in his imagination to test for wear. "The present is theirs," he once wrote, speaking of his contemporaries. "The future, for which I really worked, is mine." The words betray both his confidence and his isolation, a man out of time, building tomorrow with yesterday's tools. His rivalries became legendary. Thomas Edison, his one-time employer turned bitter enemy, represented everything Tesla despised about the scientific establishment: the focus on immediate profit, the brute force approach to innovation, the willingness to destroy others for personal gain. Their war of currents was more than a technical dispute. It was a battle for the soul of the electrical age. The historical record shows a man of extraordinary contradictions. He could work for days without sleep, sustained by nothing but his visions, then collapse into near catatonic states. He could charm the wealthiest investors in New York while believing that he was receiving messages from Mars. He could design machines of unprecedented complexity while being unable to bear the touch of human hair. His laboratory in Colorado Springs became a temple to his particular madness, or genius, depending on who you asked. There, amid artificial lightning bolts that dwarfed nature's own, he conducted experiments that pushed the boundaries of human understanding. Local residents reported seeing strange lights, hearing thunder from clear skies, watching their light bulbs glow, even when unplugged. The psychological toll of his work became increasingly evident as he aged. His proposals grew more grandiose: death rays, thought photography, wireless power transmission across continents. Each new idea seemed to push him further from the scientific establishment and closer to the edge of what society considered sane. His relationship with pigeons, particularly one white bird he claimed to love as a man loves a woman, became both comfort and symbol of his isolation. In these creatures, perhaps he found the purity of purpose that eluded him in human relationships. They didn't question his visions, didn't demand practical applications, didn't try to steal his patents or sell his dreams. Modern trauma specialists might recognize in Tesla's behavior patterns of a man who had sacrificed human connection for the pursuit of knowledge. His celibacy, which he claimed was essential for his creative powers, his inability to form lasting personal relationships, his retreat into increasingly elaborate rituals and obsessions, all suggest a mind trying to impose order on a world that refused to conform to his visions. The financial struggles that plagued his later years were perhaps inevitable for a man who once tore up a contract worth millions because it offended his sense of scientific purity. J.P. Morgan, Westinghouse, and other industrial titans found him brilliant but unpredictable, useful when controlled, dangerous when left to his own devices. His room at the New Yorker hotel became both sanctuary and prison. The once elegant inventor, who had lit up the Chicago World's Fair and illuminated the possibilities of a wireless future, reduced to feeding pigeons and writing elaborate letters about death rays to government officials who largely ignored him. Yet even in decline, his mind remained a storm of ideas. He would spend hours explaining his theories to the hotel staff, to journalists, to anyone who would listen. Many of these later ideas seemed fantastic, impossible, yet decades later, some have proven prescient. His descriptions of wireless communication, of devices that could track objects through walls, of energy weapons, read like prophecies of technologies we're only now beginning to understand. The psychological weight of being perpetually ahead of his time, of seeing possibilities others couldn't grasp, must have been enormous. He once said, "The day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in one decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence." The statement suggests both his frustration with contemporary science and his unshakable belief in a deeper reality lying just beyond human perception. His death in 1943 was as solitary as his life had been. Found by a maid who ignored his "Do Not Disturb" sign, Tesla had departed a world that was still struggling to understand what he had tried to show them. The FBI seized his papers, adding fuel to decades of conspiracy theories about what secrets might have died with him. Today, his name adorns luxury cars, his face appears on t-shirts. His legacy has been embraced by a world that largely ignored him in life. The unit of magnetic flux density bears his name, a fitting tribute to a man who thought in fields and flows rather than simple circuits. The New Yorker hotel still stands, its Art Deco facade unchanged by time. Room 3327 has been renovated, modernized, stripped of any trace of its most famous resident. But sometimes, late at night, when the city's electrical grid pulses with the rhythm of millions of lives, something strange occurs. Lights flicker without reason. Compasses spin in their cases. And if you press your ear to the wall, beneath the hum of air conditioning and the distant sound of traffic, you might hear something else. A sound like distant thunder, like the crack of artificial lightning, like the voice of a man, still trying to tell us about tomorrow.